Hello, everyone, and welcome back to GlobeX Data's channel. We're sitting here once again with Elaine, and we wanted to have a dialogue today discussing privacy rights when it comes to the digital world. Now, this is something that's been, it's your data has been kind of being used for a very long time, but I feel like people are finally starting to wise up to it now, and there seems to be a cultural pushback to the constant data mining that's happening. So, Elaine, how are you doing? Are you ready to get into it?
Ready to get into it, Michael. Thanks everyone for watching us. Yeah, let's talk about privacy and data mining indeed.
All right. So data mining's been around for a long time. It started in the 90s and it was typically more of an analytics tool, right? It's hey, you're going here, here's what you're doing, and it allowed people to kind of figure out what they need to do on the back end of things. But it really started to become more of a value proposition for them over time, where they realized by tracking people's habits, by tracking what they're saying, and so on across multiple platforms, you were able to monetize that, to use that for ad placement and such. And it was really effective. It was something that really worked for them, and it's turned into a multi-billion-dollar industry. Obviously, at the head of it, everybody knows it, everyone's aware of it now, is Facebook. Facebook's one of the biggest ones. You can see it. You can search for something on Google and you'll have a Facebook ad pop up about a very similar thing. So, Elaine, I kick it to you. What are your thoughts on this timeline? Does it sound right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. So data mining at first was, I guess it was called analytics. It was a very interesting tool. It started really with Google and the search engines, from AOL and all these old search engines. And the idea basically Google came up with the advertising concept on the internet. They really democratized that whole concept. And the
Mhm.
idea was we can tell you where your customer is and maybe what they typically buy. I mean, it was very basic at the beginning. At the same time, the search engines, mostly Google, of course, the biggest out there, were collecting all that data and that metadata and that information. And that's how they create their database, and they find out, for example, if you like hot dogs or if you like salads. So
Mhm.
and then you're gonna have the hot dog company that's gonna target, maybe, somebody that wants to buy hot dogs every day. So it's really as simple as that. And from that, it evolved into much more detailed information. And that came with the advent of the cell phone, especially, I'm not talking about the old Motorola's or the old big bricks
Yeah.
there. I'm talking about the kind of digital phone, I call them. So, the kind that you can go on the internet with, the Apple, the Android, the Samsungs, etc. And now all these applications that essentially capture that data on the phone, what we call metadata,
Mhm.
which we don't use, by the way, at Secure. We'd never do that. We're probably the only company left that doesn't do data mining. Um, they capture that and they can use that information. And the excuse is we want to give you a better experience when you're using our solution. That's
Mhm.
just an excuse. At the end of the day, they're capturing to figure out what do you do, what's
Mhm.
your life about, and where do you go for your gym, which banking do you use. So it's commercial, and it's also to increase the value of a lot of these startups. They capture data and then they resell it. Now,
Yeah.
Facebook, you mentioned, Facebook is a great example. People voluntarily put their entire life on that site,
Yeah.
or any other that will come after or came before. But really, Facebook again democratized that concept of I'm going to put my life on this page, and then I'm going to make friends and I'm going
Mhm.
to connect with other people. And it's basically creating a web of it's just self-feeding
Yeah.
essentially. And when Facebook bought WhatsApp for $19 billion, even though WhatsApp was a free service and was not generating $1 of revenue, there's a reason.
Yeah.
They figured they bought WhatsApp customers for $40 per person, per user. Of course, they maximized that $40 times 10,000, 100,000 times, because
Mhm.
now Facebook and the other guys, there's a few big advertising companies like Google, of course, Facebook are the two biggest. They basically have all the data of everybody in the world. And that's why you hear now like people are having a bit of a backlash and they're trying to push back. But it's very hard to push back when most people want to have everything easy and they use a phone for everything. And you have your cameras everywhere and you have your posting everywhere.
Yeah.
And you just basically every 15 minutes you write something about your life, and that gets recorded, right? I
Yep.
mean, Facebook, which uses WhatsApp is Facebook basically. They had a rule that February 8th of this year, if you don't accept their term, they were going to suspend and terminate your account. And the idea is basically to accept the term officially, even though they were always doing that. That basically you hand over your data. There's a US law that says that if you use a third party and you put your data over there, like an email, like a Google or anything,
Hmm.
you give your right away. So basically, you give up the right to that data. That's in the law. Forget about what you read about Facebook and WhatsApp. This has been around for years in the US. So what happened is there's a bigger backlash. People went to Signal, some people, which is
Yeah.
hosted on Amazon Web Service. Now, it may be a little bit better than Facebook, but it's not private, right? So Facebook, what they do is that when you are with your phone, through WhatsApp and through Facebook and through whatever is you installed on your phone, but everybody has WhatsApp. When you go from your office to your gym to a restaurant and then to the bank, they know where you are every single second.
Yep.
Imagine. So that's the commercial aspect. Then you have the hackers and the bad guys that are stealing that data.
Hmm.
So you have the data collectors, and then you have the people who purchase that data, and then you have people who hack into it. So the data collectors, we know who they are, the big five, let's say. You got Apple, you got Amazon, you got Facebook, you got Google, and maybe that's about it. I don't know. And then they sell to tons of other millions of companies and individuals that data because everybody wants to sell you an orange juice or something, or make sure you open a bank account at this bank. And those people who use that data essentially don't protect it. This
Yeah.
is where you see a lot of the intrusion and the hacking, not to mention that Facebook themselves, oh, Microsoft, I forgot the biggest of them all. They have from the Xbox that you're a kid and you use Xbox. Now everything is online.
Hmm.
So you connect to the internet with Xbox, you play with people globally, and then you use Microsoft tools as a student all the way to until you die, basically.
Yeah.
And then you also have LinkedIn. And now they bought another AI company. Microsoft, their source code was stolen twice already through that SolarWind hack. So they don't really care. I mean, it's not the
Yeah.
8, $10, $15 a month that you pay them to use Office that's going to make them money. On average, these big guys make at least $1,000 a month per user by selling that data. There was a lot of article that showed how Microsoft sold data to Zoom, Zoom sold to Facebook. I mean, they all exchange each other's data
Hmm.
and sell to each other. And then you have the other smaller minions, like maybe a small business that's going to buy, 1 million email, or they're gonna go on LinkedIn and scrape it, or they're gonna go to another digital company and say, I want to target everybody in Alabama that is going to buy, let's say a Chevrolet today or something.
Okay.
And that data is being sold, and that data is stored in servers that are unprotected and in companies that, even if they want to protect it, don't have the means to protect it.
Yeah.
So you have people who don't care and people who don't even have the means to protect that. Meanwhile, your phone number, your social security number, social insurance number, your life, your medical record is flying all over. And then you have the hackers coming in. They basically steal what's useful for them. They either themselves will go to your bank account and empty it, or they're going to sell that data to other people in, the, what do you call it, the dark web and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You
I
know.
kind of, that sums up the cycle. And
Yeah.
now we just can't get out of it. And there is a movement now for privacy, especially in the US. In fact, we are, pushing a huge marketing in US nationwide starting July 15, 2021, because we really are the only application that doesn't data mine you. Aside that we're in Switzerland and we're hosted there, we charge you $5 for a messaging app or $10 for the email and messaging, and we guarantee that we don't data mine you. Because we
Yeah.
don't even have cookies on our website. So, that's that's where we want to capture, for example, we're going to capture that audience that is looking for an alternative to WhatsApp, which is Facebook, or Microsoft Office, which is hacked every week, or Gmail and things like that, right? So
Yeah.
they're looking for alternative, especially in the messaging world. I'm sure you have to pay for it, but if we don't charge you your $5, then we're going to take your data, we're going to give you something for free, but we're going to make 1,000 a month from you,
Hmm.
right? But
That's
then there's zero privacy, and then again, it's the same problem.
Yeah, that's I think the free the free aspect of a lot of these companies, what it's just a honeypot, right? It just
Totally.
gets you in, and then people are stuck in it. It's things that are free and things that are incredibly convenient. It just you're the product being sold when something is free every time. That's
If
how it
it's free,
works.
you are the product, and you're producing. Data is the new oil. You're producing data every minute, every day, and data is stale after a month. So they need that new stream of data coming in that's fresh.
Hmm.
If you buy an email campaign, if you buy an email database in the US or in Canada, but in Canada, it's different because you have different rules for email. It's a little bit more strict. But in the US, if you're can spam compliant, which is nothing more than just allowing somebody to essentially, delist themselves, unsubscribe, and
Hmm.
you can put any kind of, dummy address at the bottom, could be a PO box. But if you're can spam compliant, you can buy emails of anybody and anyone, and they refresh them every month. Why? Because after 30 days, they know that the data is not going to be fresh. So they refresh it to make
Hmm.
sure that it's still the same, that it's still valid. Everything is in that 30-day cycle. So, yeah, you can do that and email everybody, and that's the same now with digital advertising. Forget email, it's much more complex, and you can geo target. How do you think we can do all these things? Is
By
because
taking
that
people's
data
data.
is for sale.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really interesting because I feel like while people are catching on to the data mining, they still don't understand the risks of that data getting hacked very well yet.
Yeah,
They're
I
not quite
think
aware
they,
of how that can be used against you. And even the simplest form is like there's things on Facebook where it'll be like, oh, well, your I don't know, your superhero name is the street you grew up on and your first pet's name. And it's like they literally are just taking your security code questions.
yeah,
It's
and the
everywhere.
machines know how to do that. They have
Yeah.
artificial intelligence now. So the data is there. It's not protected, and the companies that buy that data are not going to protect it. And it's going to, they basically, people steal your identity. And if you're a victim of identity theft, it can cost you 30 to $40,000 US by the time you get back to normal, not to mention probably a year of, emotional distress and
Yeah.
headache, and time that you spend trying to, you got so much legal issues at that point that you have to prove that it wasn't you and so forth. Somebody can go commit a crime in your name now. That's how scary it is.
Yeah. That's
So
wild.
I always recommend people to be careful. Don't just give away like that. If you need to have an email just for like the mass market thing, create a Gmail account, and that's your junk email thing for everyone to know.
Hmm.
Also, I mean, we don't have much of a choice, but I guess as an attitude, if you're on one of these websites, social media site, reduce your footprint. Like, do you really need to update everybody every 15 minutes and post photos? It's this whole social phenomena that's a whole other discussion. But when it comes to, let's say, communication, email and messaging, etc., of course, I'm going to be biased. Use a service like ours
Hmm.
because you know that it's not going to be data mined, and it's illegal in Switzerland to even divulge your IP address. So yes, pay your $5 and $10 if you want some privacy, at least in the most important aspect of your daily communication. You send business email, you send emails to other people, your medical record, your banking, and messaging is the same way.
Hmm.
So, that's something that we should just to finalize it to say, if you want some privacy in your communication, there's still a company out there, it's called GlobeX Data. Product is secure. And in the US, a lot of people now are coming to realizing that privacy is something that's eluding, it's just like fleeting now.
Yeah.
So We offer that, and we've got some very good feedback from mostly US customer because we're pushing it there as well. But even in Latin America, in Mexico, we just launched with America Mobile or Messenger. People are looking to get away from WhatsApp for business and use something else. So that's the goal that we're planning to do with America Mobile. And I think after July 15, we're going to get the start of the awareness in the US. But we know there's a business there. We've had so much feedback, and they're really starving for a solution that just doesn't steal their data.
Yeah, agreed. That was very well said. There is still options out there, guys, but you do have to make a conscious decision. You have to choose to use them and understand they will have a small fee, but that's because everything else that's giving it to you for free, again, you are the product. Well, Elaine, thank you for coming on. Thanks for the dialogue. It was really enlightening. If anyone has any questions about privacy or anything, let us know. We'll be happy to dive into it for you. And stay tuned for more news coming from GlobeX Data soon. Elaine, thank you for your
Thank
time.
you. Thank you, Michael. And if you want to look at what we do and what we post and all the news out there about privacy and cybersecurity, go to our Twitter account at GlobeX Data, or you can go to our website, globexdata.com.